Thank you, Maggie. But I think he's the kind of person I would like to know really as a person, like a real person. But he lives in Cheyenne, Wyoming. So I probably won't get to know him that well. And it appears that he has a very busy life that includes children, career, family, the whole scene. And from what I heard him share in Colorado on the mountain, that he really seeks to demonstrate these principles in all his affairs. And I would also like to say that he's an Al-Anon and ACA. So with that, I'll let Josh start doing whatever it is you're going to do, Josh. Good luck.
Thank you, Dawn. Can everybody hear me okay? You got a thumbs up? All right. Perfect. Good to see some of you folks out here in Zoom land. I noticed some familiar faces from FOTS. I see Tom and Juanita out there from Santa Fe. Good to see you guys here on the call as well. So Dawn, thanks for asking me to be of service. What a great topic, and hoping I can add to some of it. I always preface before I share, take what you like and leave the rest. So I hope to get through a little bit about my journey, and not only to wow and dazzle you with my qualifications to be an Al-Anon and an ACA, but also so you get a sense of the pitfalls that came several years into the program, which is, I think, what this emotional sobriety talks about, and what it speaks to me is what is the evolution of your program. And so I hope to share a little bit about that tonight. So my name is Josh. Yeah, I am in Cheyenne, Wyoming right now. I am a double winner in the sense of Al-Anon and ACA, and I'll talk more in depth about that. But the way that I've split up my life from a 12-step program is Al-Anon is for the adult Josh, and that's the version that you see in front of you here tonight. The ACA version of me is the little child Josh that I had to abandon and survive in a certain environment growing up. And as an adult, I had to go back and rescue little Josh, as I call him, to heal. And that was part of my journey that I didn't know was coming when I first stepped into the rooms of 12-step programs, first in Al-Anon. My home groups are Searching Out Serenity. That's in downtown Cheyenne in the library. We meet Mondays at noon. If anybody's traveling through, we're glad to have you. It's an open meeting. And then my ACA meeting, because of my geographic location, I actually don't go to an in-person ACA meeting, but I do rely on Zoom heavily, as I'm assuming some of you do as well, for your 12-step, which is maybe one of the benefits of COVID. And we meet Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Mountain Time, and that is a worldwide Zoom meeting, which is really nice because you can see from all over the world the effects of alcoholism and how that has affected so many. It's a great sense of belonging. So I guess what I'd like to do is kind of start with a little bit about my childhood and kind of where I'm from. It's an important part of my story. So I grew up in Fort Collins, Colorado. I don't know, for some audience participation, does anybody know, show of hands, where Fort Collins is? Thank you. I try to break it down a little bit, Zoom land, so try to have that participation. Thank you. So great place to grow up. I was very privileged to grow up in Fort Collins. There's a lot of folks that grew up in a lot of circumstances that were tougher than mine, including both of my parents. And so I was grateful to have this environment that I grew up in. Before I get into the details of all that, grew up in Fort Collins, played sports. I was able to play football in college in South Dakota, got hurt, came home to rehab, finished at CSU, and then went to Denver for the high-paying corporate job in the big city, and was in Denver for 16 years. And then during COVID, reevaluated my life, and ended up moving with my wife's closer to my wife's family for a number of situations that I'll get into as well in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And so it's been a big shift going from Denver to Cheyenne, as maybe some of you have driven through that. and basically have been here for the last year, and I'd like to share my story with you. So growing up, I preface all of this with I don't know if any of you have heard this, but you're only as sick as your secrets. And I grew up in an alcoholic home and in a dysfunctional home as well. And not only that, and some of you have heard this before too, but my mother has multiple personality disorder. And so it's one of those things where I didn't know what I was getting, and that had a profound impact on my connection to the world and those around me, and not only strangers, but people that love me and say that they love me as well. So I didn't know about any of this growing up. I honestly can sit here in front of you and say for the first 28 years of my life that I thought my mother was crazy. I thought there was something mentally, there was a screw loose. There was a connection point that I couldn't fathom why. And because of these secrets that happened in her life that I found out about later, that light bulb moment came out for me when I was 28 years old, and she shared some of her the violent trauma, sexual trauma that had happened to her growing up, which obviously had a profound impact on how she raised me and my brother. My dad is also in play here. He's more of the enabler. My mom, like I said, was the alcoholic, but she was able to get sober when I was, let's see, what was that? I was 11 years old when she finally put down the drink. And she didn't join AA or a fellowship. She did it kind of cold turkey, as they speak, and then has just never had the desire to pick it up again. That being said, there were a lot of moments after that where that dysfunction was a lot uglier than the alcoholism in our home. And I don't want to traumatize anybody with those details, so I'll try to keep those brief. But really, there was moments where that dry drunk mentality was there. And boy, did I want her desperately to drink, because then at least I could have some reprieve from that immediate moment. And a lot of folks probably know what I'm talking about there. My dad is the classic baby boomer, does not talk about emotion. It's very, it's viewed upon as weak to talk about feelings. And so when in this environment growing up, I really didn't know what to believe, because I thought, okay, I'm coming to this conclusion that my mom is crazy. There's alcohol in our home. My dad is saying, don't worry about it. It's okay. Let's look past, look over here. Let's make sure the outside of our home is nice and pretty, but nobody really can understand what's going on inside of the home. And there was a lot of fighting. There was never really any violence between my parents. My dad is more of a pacifist, but he is very enabling in that my mom runs the show, and whatever she says goes, even to a detriment of maybe some unhealthy behavior where I desperately wish he would have intervened at some point and said, are we really going down this path, and this can be damaging. I escaped. I'm not an addict, and I'm not an alcoholic, and it's very crazy that I'm not, because I come from a long lineage of that. For me, my ism has always been escapism. And so growing up, what I would do is I would try to keep myself as busy as possible to avoid being at home. And if I was in the home, I would always try to seek out, I was into geography and maps and reading about cultures all over the world, and pretty much anywhere but here. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with that phrase. So even though I'm growing up in this great town and this great city and all these mountains, I was anywhere but here, kind of like everybody has a common link on some of that with your childhoods. And so what did I do? I excelled in sports, and really that was going to be my option. I come from very humble beginnings. We didn't have a lot of money, and so very early on, my parents instilled the dysfunction of my relationship with money, that money buys happiness, or it at least will put you in a position in life where if you don't struggle as much, it won't be as difficult. And so my occupation with that kept up with, okay, how do I get a scholarship? How do I get to a college? Because I can't afford to pay for this on my own. My family doesn't have any money for this, but I got to get out. And so I'm going to do whatever it takes to do that. So I was able to excel in 3 sports and got a football scholarship to move on. During those high school years, a lot of my friends started drinking early. It was a time where microbrews were popping up. Fort Collins was a hub for that. It just so happened to be that I was in that environment, and so were my friends. So a lot of my friends started drinking, 13, 14, 15 years old. And I partook a little bit with them as well. But this, one of the saddest parts of my story is that a couple of my friends got that itch and never were able to really put that down, and continue to this day struggle with alcohol. And so I hung around with a certain crew, and everybody, knows about the cliques in high school. I was one of those that I had friends in all different cliques, and I was proud of that. I liked a lot of different diversity. I liked a lot of different perspectives in life. The romantic relationships that I had with my girlfriends, they all seemed to fit a common pattern that I discovered when doing the 12-step work in Al-Anon later on. And it all had to do with consumption. A lot of my girlfriends love to drink, and they could drink. And I'm not talking about like a binge drinker. I'm talking about, the ones that can come to the bar with your football buddy, sneak in and outdrink anybody in the bar, kind of girls. That was what I really went for. I love alcoholics. My favorite band is Motley Crue. And it was well before my time, but I just love this idea of excess and this thought of, okay, everybody's having a good time, right? Well, as everybody knows, there's a lot of consequences that come with that, and the party does stop at some point. The sad part with the friends that I choose, inside I was already conflicted at this developmental stage, and so I was really worried about somebody finding out how crazy my mom was in the background. She would yell at football games. She would yell at the basketball games. She would make a scene in a lot of my junior basketball games and stuff like that. And so I was really trying to prevent that. And so what did I do? Unconsciously, I surrounded myself with a group of people that, hey, if I'm in a lineup, so to speak, with everybody in this school, I'm actually not so bad because there's a lot of craziness all around me, but I look pretty good. And so I that was a way that I could disguise myself and my pain. I didn't talk about a lot of things that were going on. So I come back, or I go to play football. I get hurt, and that is a big setback for me and my family dynamic. A lot of my dad's love and affection came because I was so successful in sports, and when that is suddenly yanked out from you, we didn't have enough traction, and he didn't have enough emotional stability to help me through that transition of just being a regular student. And so I took out loans, and I just went to school and just became a regular student, which was great for me. But the family dynamic had shifted at that point. In that environment, in college, I really didn't party. I didn't really surround myself with people that were partiers. I had my core group of friends that from high school, they didn't really launch, and they were just in town. And so I would see them occasionally, but I was living this double life, basically. I was living this life of here's a student in college business. I'm doing this, Monday through Friday, but yet, Friday night, Saturday night, I'm pulling my friends out of the bar. I'm trying to help out where I can in a custody battle with one of my friends that had a child very young. I'm getting involved in all this stuff. And that is what I'm attracted to, right? I'm attracted to that addiction. And so anyways, more of that pattern will come up in my current situation. I really, there was another monumental moment that happened for me when I was 23 as I was finishing college, and a really good friend of mine passed away basically in my arms. We were on a snowmobiling trip, and there was an accident, and he didn't make it. And I had to witness the end of his life out in the middle of nowhere where nobody could help us. And that had a profound impact on me for the rest of my life. And this spiritual sickness really started then at that point. This was a really good friend of mine that, despite going out and enjoying a Saturday night, he would teach Sunday school to kids at a church. He had a very strong faith. And so my whole spiritual world got rocked. And when I say like rebel against spiritual, like I was mad at God, straight up mad at God. How do you take this person and not me? And a lot of survivor guilt that came with that for many years. And I could not pick up the pieces and go forward with that. When I had my spiritual awakening in Al-Anon years later, I had to go back to that moment. I had to reconcile that with God because I was very, very angry with that whole situation. After I moved to Denver, I started to date, and I took this corporate gig, high paying gig. It was a lot of hours. It was very demanding. It pulled me out of the Fort Collins crew and put me into another crew, which was the downtown Denver young business professionals, where there's always a happy hour. And guess what? I was never partaking in the happy hour, but I really was attracted to all these people that were in this downtown happy hour, because they seemed to be able to party hard, be able to get up early, go to work, do the things necessary to make that high income living and lifestyle. During this time, I'm kind of bored with who I'm really seeing, and I eventually meet my eventual wife, and I meet her at a party, go figure, and I'm the classic Al-Anon showing up to the party. She's on the porch and she's had too much to drink, but I am so drawn to her because that's what I'm attracted to. I said, that's the one that I'm going to go after. And so I pursued for a long time, and we dated for a long time. We had a lot of ups and downs. There were a lot of moments where drinking I thought was to excess, but then I also thought life circumstances were going to change. Oh, hey, once we think about settling down, she's going to start drinking a little bit less. Hey, once we start talking about buying a house together and being a little bit more financially responsible and not closing out the bar and having a huge, you're basically your bar bill being twice your mortgage. Hey, she's going to grow up at some point with this. And that never really happened. And I was so sick in my mind too, that I was never going to leave her either. I loved the control and this idea that I can be the DD. I can dictate where we're going, when we can leave, or she can find another ride. And so I got really drawn into the control aspect of a lot of this. And that's what really drew me to my alcoholic, as I say. How I got into Al-Anon, I was away at a bachelor party, and my wife, well, girlfriend at the time, had one of those really tough benders where she would drink all weekend, and she was coming out of that on Sunday and feeling a lot of anxiety and scared. And she decided to call her cousin, who knew a prominent AA person in Denver, and she was finally ready to admit that she had a problem. She did all this without me there, even though I thought it was a problem and liked to point that out to her on a regular basis. And so she discovered the AA, the rooms of AA, and it saved her life. It really did. And I believe it saved mine as well, because that had an indirect path for me to jump into Al-Anon. And so all that friction with booze, again, I'm over here hiding and standing next to somebody where it's a little bit crazier. So look over here for the chaos. I'm just fine. I'm just fine. And keep that in mind as a pattern that follows me through life. And obviously I was not fine. And so I jumped into Al-Anon, and I thought I was going to be there. I'm a very list oriented person. So, hey, I'm going to get through these 12 steps. I'm going to check mark this off. I'm going to figure out how to keep her sober, and life is going to be great, right? That was my ignorance and my expectation with that. Coming into these meetings and figuring out, wait a minute, oh, so the focus is on me, not her, and really kind of unearthing some of my dysfunction when I discovered these rooms when I was 32 years old. It was hard. It was a hard pill to swallow when you're sitting there going, like, pointing the finger at everybody. And then you learn that, well, 3 fingers are pointing back at you while you're pointing at somebody else. And boy, did I think my side of the street was squeaky clean, and I was wrong. And so the language started to make sense for me, and it started to click. And these patterns, as I worked my way through the 12 steps, I went about it from a big book perspective. So I'm a big book Al-Anon. And so looking at the structure and changing just a few of these words, and the Alcoholics Anonymous book works for me too. You just have to change a few of the words and it speaks right to me. Going through this seemed to set us free as a couple. We decided to get engaged in this because my wife was sober for a good chunk of years. And I said, okay, well, she's put in the time, she's demonstrated that she can do this. And I never really wanted to leave her, even in those bad times. And so we decided to get married. And we had a great wedding. It was funny because there was half of the people were from AA. And then there was all the other the old friends of mine, and then her old friends that, you know, like to party. So it was this very interesting smorgasbord of a wedding. But it was great. And I love sharing about how it does work out. And I knew very well before I married her going in that I'm the Al-Anon, she's the alcoholic, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that agreement, because I don't view myself as being better than. I just want to be along for the ride. So we get married and we're traveling the world. We're living it up in Denver. I have a very lucrative career that takes off, and she does as well. And she's working more of a dream job, helping others. And she lands the job that she's wanted her whole life, completely gets immersed and lost in that lifestyle. And here I am doing the corporate thing, making a lot of money, and we're enjoying traveling the world, thinking this is easy street, right? This is all the hard work of all these 12-step meetings and being of service. And so we get to enjoy this. In this dysfunction, I was never going to bring a child into this world with our relationship. I was very adamant about that. I knew I was going to go down. I knew that I was sick enough to go down with her, but I was never going to bring a child into that dynamic. And so after a number of years, we started to have conversations about starting a family. And we decided to do this. And little did we know how that would affect things going forward. And I know I sound very naive when I say that, because we knew it was going to make a big change, but there were some awake moments that had to happen. And if we didn't have our son, that wouldn't have been a part of our story. In the background of all of this, I'm working through my steps. I get through one set of steps with the big book style. I do a step study going through the big book again. And then I do one with Al-Anon related literature. And I didn't like the structure of that enough. It was a lot of writing. It was more writing. It wasn't the 19 words or less step 4 that AAs work on some of those experiences. And I didn't really care for that. Because again, I come from a repressed emotional family. I don't want to develop that way. I don't have a lot to say. I feel sad. That's it. That's as deep as I'm going. But in me, I knew something was in there ready to come out and say, hey, I need something different here. And you need to be honest with yourself with that. I start to have a lot of relationship issues with my parents at this time. When a member of the family gets better and starts growing along spiritual lines, everybody in the family notices that, no matter how much dysfunction is going on. And I was the same way. I started to get better. I started to react differently, and my parents were thrown by it. So I'm starting to grow. She's growing. Life is good. And then things start to unravel a little bit. We have our son, and it obviously changes our life. But what it does is, in both of us, it wakes up what happened in our childhood, because you start to think a little bit differently, and you start to have these moments where, well, I didn't think about this when I was out there living it up in Denver, but now that I'm holding my son, how could my dad ever bring shame? How could my mom ever bring toxic shame into the mix and tell me what was going on was something that it wasn't? How can this whole thing happen? How can you not be emotionally available for your kids? All these questions start stirring deep within me, and they start stirring within my wife as well. And so we're sitting in Denver, and then a couple of things happen. My wife's job was so emotionally draining. She's a social worker, and I won't go into too many details, but the things that when she says she has a day, seeing the things, families getting torn apart, fighting for custody battles, fighting for second chances for the incarcerated, she's emotionally drained. She starts to break down. This is in the middle of dealing with postpartum and no sleep. Our son did not sleep. He was a 15-minute napper, then he would be up for 45 minutes. And so she starts to break down. When that happens, I internalize that and think there's something going on with me. Not only that, but this whole thing with my childhood has been woken up deep within me. So I start to question things as well. Boom. Then COVID happens and we have this great social life. And then we even have our son and we still have a little bit of a social life and we're very involved in all these programs. Boom. COVID happens. And Al-Anons are very fear-based. I'm a fear-based individual too. So all of my home groups, I was dancing between 3 different meetings, depending on his sleep schedule. I suddenly feel like I don't belong in Al-Anon anymore. And there's not a place for me to go where I feel like I belong. So I start to deteriorate. And then I have this moment where I start missing meetings. And then I go for a couple of weeks, then a couple of months. And this all goes into this spiritual reawakening that I had, which is part of my emotional journey, my emotional sobriety journey, where just doing the steps and going to an occasional meeting does not equate to long-term success in this program. Not only that, my wife's father passes away, and how that complicates our situation is her older brother has Down syndrome. So suddenly we are guardians of a 40-year-old man who has a 7-year-old mental capacity, yet has the body of like a 65-year-old man. And so we're dealing with that with a young kid and trying to figure out how do we do that. On top of that, she walks away from work and she needs to take a break. She keeps telling how burnout she is, and they don't change it. They just keep piling the work on. So she walks away. Right at that same time, the company that I've been with forever and building this lucrative career, they go under basically, and I get a severance package because they're closing the US office and that's it. And it's a very abrupt end to a long-term solution that I thought I was in. So our whole comfort level just gets thrown in like a couple of years. And and I don't want to say like I'm the only one that really struggled with that, but COVID also contributed to that and really hurt us with actually getting some support from human interaction with all that. So we decided to make some decisions. And one of those was to leave Denver behind, because why are we dealing with the traffic if I don't have a job there? If she doesn't have a job there, what are we doing? And so we decided to move closer to her family in Cheyenne. Little did I know that decision was going to be the way that I was going to move closer towards emotional sobriety. I was so wrapped up in the lifestyle, the things that the reading mentioned, right? We're talking about the security, the romance, the approval of our peers in that city. And suddenly that's okay. You guys are both unemployed. What's going on? What's going on? And almost being a little bit shamed for that, being a little bit scared to tell people and being vulnerable about what's really going on. During this next piece of our story, I take a job with a very toxic company, and it's one of the only places that's hiring in town. I don't know my identity outside of being a provider, so how can I do anything different? And so I take this job, very toxic, and it's bad. I know it from day one. Walking in, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm in deep. So not only am I scared to share where we're at, but I've made now 2 wrong decisions. 1, to leave Denver, and then 2, to select employment with this company. Great, I'm feeling really good now. A situation occurs in that job where I have to walk away. Management asked me to cover up an incident, and I won't do it. I can't do it. And so I abruptly quit. Little did I know how hard it is to find a job for a professional in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And I'll get to the good part here. I swear it's coming. And all this time, not knowing what's going to come. In the meantime, my wife takes a job where she's remote, and she really doesn't thrive in that environment. She likes being in person. And so she's struggling with her career. So now all these things with all this stability has now suddenly been rocked. And I'm talking like rocked down to the foundation where, hey, the foundation's not only cracked, but we sold that foundation in Denver that was cracking and bought a new one, but this one's more cracked up here. Very scary times for me. It took me 8 months to find another job. The last winter was brutal for us. Our son is flourishing here, which is one of the bright spots that I thank God every day for. And that was one of the things when we talk about how can you be of service to others? What's the greater good? We talk about this security in life that I really thought I could be in control of. As my story has alluded, I made a lot of right decisions and I still couldn't control any of that. God had a path for me and a certain set of circumstances that I had to go through. In the middle of all this, I really turned back to my program. So I start working Al-Anon. I double down on Al-Anon. So I start meeting with my sponsor again. And that goes well. I'm meeting with my sponsee and we're doing it weekly, which is great. I'm going to all these meetings. I then start thinking about ACA and it's been on my radar, but I've been like, I don't want to go there. Who wants to go there, right? When you make your list of people that you're willing to make amends to, there's a lot of things from my childhood that went into the, yeah, maybe someday, but not right now. And I pushed it off. Well, that came coming and I needed to deal with that. And so with a gentle nudge from my higher power, I discovered the rooms of ACA and found out how dysfunctional growing up in this home really was. And all of this denial that just crept over all of my childhood to really disillusion me from whatever really happened. So in the middle of all this, I'm not working. I'm rudderless. I'm sitting here being a dependent when normally people depend on me. And I have to very quickly figure out, can I get up and make it from this situation? And what did I do? I really went to God with this. And this is the moment for me that I felt I had to, it's not about hitting your knees the first time. It's about continuing to hit your knees and ask for guidance and how can I be of service when things aren't going your way? Like it said in the reading here, right? With the St. Francis prayer, how can I be of service? Don't serve me. I feel miserable now. And I desperately wanted the life raft. But for whatever reason, I wasn't getting that. I could not see what was around the corner for me. And so what I really needed to do was work on my spiritual sense and my connection with my higher power. And honestly, that's the only thing that saved me. I wanted to run back so many times to Denver. I wanted to run back so many times to the family that I knew, the circumstances that I knew. Put me in a room. There were moments that my crazy mind went to, man, if my wife picks up a drink right now, I can focus on that. I don't have to focus on how miserable I feel. So I needed that fall. And everybody talks in life about there's 2 to 3 falls that happen in everybody's life. And I really clung to that because that first one, as you can remember from my story, was my spiritual bias from my friend passing away. That was number one for me. And I could not rebound from that for so many years. Thank goodness for some EMDR therapy techniques. I'm able to put that accident behind me and move on. But guess what? The other reconciling moment for me came when all of that, the fake security, the fake sense of belonging, the fake romance, when all of that goes away and you're left there, what do you really have? And guess what? Because of Al-Anon, I had this spiritual awareness and I had a God that I understood that actually could be there for me. Thank God I had that life raft with all of this. How does this all tie into emotional sobriety? Demanding, like the reading says, with demanding the impossible. That's the way that I lived my life for the first 7 years of my Al-Anon journey. This last year, I just celebrated I'm going into my 8th year of Al-Anon here. The 7th year was the toughest one, and there was no active drinking in the home. And because everything else was stripped away, and all that was left was me and my relationship to God, and how willing am I to grow along spiritual lines, but also how willing am I to do the next right thing? And how willing am I to choose the healthier decision and not go back into dysfunction when it's so easy to pick the latter? And I can only imagine, because I don't know what it's like to lose the decision on the drink, but I can imagine that would have been a moment for me to relapse. That was set it up. That whole sequence set me up for a perfect relapse moment. And what did I have to do? I had to double down with the program. I had to go to God daily, multiple times a day. It wasn't even it's so cliche that they say it's one day at a time. There were parts this last winter for me where it was an hour at a time for me. That's how fragile I really did feel. And I hope that some of you can at least relate to that. And I'm sure some of you can. What I need to do is really reach out to others and see who I could help. And so I wasn't the only one going through tough times, but yet in my bubble, in my mindset, remember, I like to only see what I'm really struggling with. And sure, in front of everybody, yeah, I'll help you out. I'll do that. But it's a really half-hearted gesture. It's like, I really hope they don't call. Or when Dawn sees me at FOTS and says, hey, will you speak on this? And I say, yes, but I really don't want to. So, but I feel called to do that because hopefully something in my story can help somebody else, whatever that little nugget, whatever that kernel can be. I hope that it can help somebody else out. And that's what God said. You need to share this. You need to talk about this. And you need to talk about being in an emotionally suppressed environment growing up and how eventually that comes out and you have to deal with that. And I'm a father now, and I've got a 4-year-old looking at me right in the face, and I have to do something very different. The old way of thinking has to go. The old narrative has to go. My wife and I are adamant about breaking the cycle of addiction. And unfortunately, it tangled up both of us, but our son still has some hope. And he's growing up in this environment where we talk and we're open about what we're feeling. We're talking about the connection points between what we're feeling based on an event that happens in our life or in our day. And it's really good. It's very simple, but I didn't know how to even be an adult. And I'm here almost 40 years old. So the other thing is thinking about the third step with my story and the connection point of is everybody on this call really willing to do what God puts in front of you? And can you do that and not be bitter and resentful? Because I started off like, okay, I can do this and I can do this. But then when I didn't get the set of circumstances that I want, when having the resume that I do, nobody is interested in hiring me up here. How does that help you? And then you start going after yourself and you start questioning all this, but can you really still say, okay, the path, I can't see it, but I'm still willing to walk one day at a time, 1 foot in front of the other. It's hard. It's really freaking hard. And I had a new appreciation for that, like no other this year of reconciling with my higher power, with what was coming here. The other part is this old narrative of thinking. And there's two things that trip me up and get me into trouble. Number one is the adult Josh trying to control the outcome. It's always about how can I manipulate? How can I control this situation to get the outcome that I want? Or maybe it's not even the one that I want. Maybe it's the path of least resistance. What's going to be the least painful way to get through this set of circumstances? But you can't grow in that mindset. And that's what came for me in year 7 of my program. The other part is this old narrative of thinking that because of my childhood, I am going to turn into my parents and I will start thinking the same way that they did. Part of the ACA process is to really take a searching and fearless a blameless inventory of your parents too. And that's really hard because I've been using my parents as the blame game for so long. And finally that ran out. And so now I'm in a different 12-step program with ACA trying to work that and figure out how I can be different going forward. So I'm not reacting in the controlling adult Josh, but also I've got this other voice coming over here with this old thinking, dysfunctional survival of my childhood that I used as a survival technique growing up. That same thought process and those same tools, they don't serve me well with my current situation. And so being able to be mature enough to bounce back and forth with those and handle a situation in front of you to the best of my ability. And I am never going to be fully healed. I'm going to be in recovery for a while. My checklist didn't go as quickly as I thought it was. And I'll probably be here for the rest of my life. And after the year that I've had, I'm grateful for that because I needed something to say, hey, when you are down and you're thinking about not getting back up, I need that promise of the program. I need that sense of belonging. I need those rooms. I need those open AA meetings. I need an Al-Anon meeting. I need an ACA meeting. I need somebody that can get me. And I can't get that anywhere else out in the world but in these rooms. So I feel like I've been talking a lot. I hope there was some kernel of hope in all of that. And I'm open for questions. And I don't know, Dawn, how we kind of finish the rest of our time together, but I just want to say thank you for letting me share my story. And it's great to see you all.
All right, Josh, that was wonderful, 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 wonderful. So what we do to start off, because a lot of times the level of intimacy that gets shared at the beginning kind of leaves people a little speechless. So we let the speaker call on a few people to start off the meeting so we can get it moving. So who would you like to hear from?
Oh boy, let's see here. Well, I see Juanita right in my screen, so I'm sorry, but because I know you and I love Santa Fe, so I'm going to call on Juanita.
Hey, Josh, thank you so much. This emotional sobriety stuff I think it's going to be never ending. I will be dealing with this till the day I die. I truly, truly believe that. I was at an in-person meeting, a face-to-face meeting, in-person meeting yesterday, and I had an opportunity to share. And I wouldn't have called my sharing emotional sobriety, but it was exactly that. It's after 36 years of Al-Anon, I basically watched myself in my bad moments behave like a spoiled little brat. I'm like this 2-3-year-old kid just throwing this nasty little tantrum and misbehaving and just, it's like, I'm just being horrible. And I get to see that when the connection with the God of what I call my experience isn't there. It's those days where I take that time in the morning and maybe I rush through prayer meditation, or maybe I give it that good solid time. Maybe I sit and do my readings and meditate, and I'm sitting there and I'm feeling good and life is good and I feel connected, and God and I just spent like an hour, just really hanging there, and I feel really good. And then all of a sudden I get up to go about my day and I've left God. It's like all of a sudden it's like I'm doing this life on my own, and it's like, how does that happen? And I don't know it's happening until I run up against myself and I watch myself with a bad attitude. And nobody might know it. A lot of times nobody knows it. But boy, when I go to bed at night and I go, well, one more time, you're this little shit. And it's like, and so I've been watching that, and I've been saying a prayer. In fact, yesterday I was swimming. And as I was swimming, what I found myself doing, because my head started going, and I started, started that blame game and that criticism and all that stuff. And all of a sudden what happened was I started thinking, wait a minute, God, clearly this isn't going the way I think it should be going. And then clearly I don't think that you're very pleased with my attitude here. How about as I swim, because I'm also not feeling strong as I'm swimming, how about you carry me in the pool? And so I'm going to swim, but I'm going to picture myself on your back, and you're going to carry me in the pool, and we're going to do this swim thing, right? Then I do a few strokes, and the next thing I know, I'm going, wait a minute. This idea of me resting on God is pretty darn good. But what about if I let God surround me? Not only if I let God surround me, but what if I just feel God within me as I'm swimming, as I'm doing this whole thing, in the pool? And boy, I tell you, all of a sudden, God was there. God was there, and it felt right. And I was able to show up for the rest of my day. In fact, it's as you said, it's like sometimes this thing is like hour by hour. And it's like, what the heck do you mean a day at a time? it's like 10 minutes at a time. And I found myself going, okay, God, it's like, what are we going to do here? Because I don't want to be that jerk. I don't want to be this. I want you and I need you. And it makes all the difference in the world, and this whole thing with emotional sobriety really comes down to exactly what you said towards the end, which is, am I going to rely on God? Am I really going to rely on God? Is it going to be God in me, through me, with me, carrying me? Or is it going to be me trying to run the show? And it's not until one more time I'm up against myself, as many of us often say, I wake up to see how much I've been asleep, and how much I've been this little brat and not been a grown-up, not been in emotional sobriety. Anyway, thanks for your share. It was great. Thank you, Josh. It's good to see you. Thank you.
Juanita. Thank you very much. One thing that I wanted to also, just as thinking about my sharing, even though I turned my back on God and really did move away from any kind of spiritual connection, God was with me the whole time through all my journey. And the last part of that, when I finally found a job, it was with a company that really values me for me and my perspective, not the bottom line. And so I don't work for a massive corporation anymore. And I'm in a very good situation where I can earn a living, yet I don't have to be a workaholic. And at the same time, I can heal. And that is really where God showed up for me, so that I don't have to miss out on any time with my son or my wife. And that's the miracle of this program, of being able to have the spiritual awakening, as for me. So let's see, how much more time, how are we doing on time, Don?
We're good. We got the whole half an hour.
Okay, I see somebody from Denver on here, so I'm sorry, that's part of my story. So Lisa, or I believe it's Kathy, do you feel comfortable sharing?
We'll take both of them.
I'll remember to turn the speaker on. All right, Lisa first.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you so much for your share. It was it's a little tongue-tied, but one of the things I was thinking about is that I haven't, even though I've gone through the steps, I don't think I've seen I've looked at trends in my relationships, in my romantic relationships. And it would be interesting, because I'm starting the steps again. Kathy's my sponsor. So it would be interesting to look at that, right? And to see what keeps repeating, right? As I was listening to the share too, I had just really come today really to this point of surrender. For the last 2 weeks, like I felt so overwhelmed and stressed by work and by just life. There was like having heart palpitations, and I had a heavy chest. And like every minute I was just saying, God, can you take this? God, just take this. God, just take this. But at the same time, I was still fighting, right? Like I was still fighting it because I still wanted to succeed in my head, but really the succeeding is to finally come to this point of surrender. And you talked a lot about control, and that's part of it, right? Like I want to control things so I'll be okay. And that's exhausting. It's really exhausting. And so now, thank God too that, we have so many tools in our toolkit, I tell you, because, and some I forget about, and then people remind me, but I don't know how people go through life with all of this, because gosh, I would be a wreck, I mean, I'm so fortunate to have so many go-tos, to navigate through this life. and value each day and be able to show up for the most part as the person I want to be. I heard about tantrums and I was thinking, oh, I think it's been a while. And then I had one at work with the president, which is not always good. So I had conveniently forgot about that. That was like only 2 weeks ago. But yeah, I think that the surrender is just such a gift, because it opens up the path for things to be given to me that I could never even imagine, that it's better than I've ever even imagined. And it's so nice not to have that fear all the time, not to go through life or, that period I went through with just that fear. And just to enjoy what's given to me, enjoy the present moment, enjoy everything that I've been given, remembering that gratitude of how fortunate, I am and we are, that it still blows my mind that even though I have really close friends and my partner's not alcoholic or an Al-Anon or anything, like there's just a closeness that happens in this room that, for me at least, is not replicated. There's just, like, I could sit here and talk about like what's going on in my life and the, the trials that I've had and things that have worked for me, to 50 strangers, right? But I feel at home, right? You feel like family, and it's amazing. It's an amazing gift, and I'm fortunate to be here. So thank you for your shares.
Thank you, Lisa. Should I go ahead, Dawn?
Yes, please.
Josh, thank you so much. You know what? I say this a lot because it feels true. I often have love attacks when I hear people sharing from their heart. So I'm having a total love attack for you. And what that means for me is this point of identification. So I don't know at which point in time I realized that I grew up in a house of horrors with alcoholics and, oh my God, generational alcoholism and poverty and death and destruction and murder and chaos. I mean, seriously, like people murdered people. And it's, when the moment at which that all started to come, like falling down on me, is like, oh my God, like, no wonder I'm so messed up. And so the truth of the matter is it's not so, no wonder I'm so messed up. I listened to lots of things in my journey. I always have, but particularly since the fire, because I hadn't been well. And I started to think that, there's nothing wrong with not feeling well when something big happens. And I was listening to Tara Brach. Do you know she is sort of the Marianne Williamson of the Buddhist world. And so she has lots of podcasts and books and things. And so I was listening to one of her talks, and she was talking about whatever the troubles are that befall you, there's nothing wrong. Actually, that is your journey. That is not in your way. It is your way. And it's like, oh, yeah. Okay. And that's what I heard you share, is that these things aren't in your way. They are your way. These are the points at which you are meant to share with us about what your journey is. That gives me hope. It shows me somebody else is doing hard work. And that's what the love attacks are about, that God almighty, we do deep work. I don't even know how people talk on a surface level. I seem fairly incapable of it. I get bored like in a couple of minutes, like I don't really care about the weather and I do not want to talk about the news, God forbid politics. And so then, but I want to go to heart and soul, because my heart and soul continuously is hungry for this connection. And that was when many years ago, I fell in love with Alcoholics Anonymous, because I found finally the place where I fit. And so thank you, Josh. You helped me to know that I still fit. Thank you. Love you all.
Let's try pick one more, Josh, and then we'll open it up.
Let's see here. New York, Dave H. You want to come in and share?
Hi, Josh. Good to see you again. As I was listening to the terror, I call it the terror you went through in 2020, and I haven't had to face anything quite that bad and I'm an AA, and I can't imagine trying to do it without having a God that I could rely on to do it. And to hear you say how often you went was very inspiring to help you get through all of that and how it worked out. It's just a tribute to what you're doing. I think I heard you before. I think at FATS for a little bit and that stuff, and enjoyed your story. And that the piece about trying to find yourself as a child. I'm a child of an alcoholic also. I've never gone through that and studied it to any degree, but I know it lingers there. So maybe it gave me some insight on a little avenue to chase down. Thank you so much. It was great talk. Thanks.
Does anybody want to share? If you wave, I can see you. And if you have know how to put your hand up in the, Joanna.
Thank you, Josh. I really appreciated your talk. I'm an alcoholic, but I'm also part of Al-Anon and CODA. I'm not an ACA, but I could be. And actually, I wanted to know if you could put in the chat the time and meeting ID of that Zoom ACL meeting that you attend. If that would be possible, I'd really appreciate it. And I thank you for your talk because it was very inspiring. And you know, you did it perfectly. You were vulnerable, you were yourself. And in all the programs, what is the one thing in common? To thine own self be true. And that's what you did. So thank you. That was very refreshing.
Thank you.
I'm pretty sure we're hearing from Tom.
Tom, alcoholic. Josh, thanks so much. Yeah, I remembered your share at FOTS also, and a lot of that came back. I grew up with two alcoholic parents, and who were good people, you know, and tried their best to take care of us. I mean, my mom was extremely neurotic as well as alcoholic. But there's something that's occurred, you know, a lot of people talk about trauma now. They were talking about it in the 80s when I got sober, and it's kind of come full circle. Now you hear a whole lot of that kind of talk again. And we live in Santa Fe, we live half time in Nashville. And in Nashville, I hear in meetings that, you know, all addiction is based on trauma. And I started thinking about that, and I thought, you know, what child doesn't grow up with trauma? I mean, there's, you know, different levels of it. I mean, like Kathy's talking about murder and, you know, mayhem and stuff. And I didn't have that, but I started thinking more about it. And my brother's 4 years younger than I am. It's just the two of us, the two siblings. And when I got sober, I was, you know, because I was going to ACA, I was doing a lot of different types of things. And I said, Jim, you know, didn't it bother you, you know, when Dad would be driving and he's like so drunk that he can't really speak? I mean, you know, he's slurring his words, and then we grew up outside New York City, and he worked in New York, and we lived on Long Island, and he'd commute, and sometimes we'd be with him. And, you know, he'd like the side of the car would go into the guardrail, or, you know, whatever was there at the time. Now it's concrete, you know, rails, and scrape the car, and there'd be sparks flying. And didn't that stuff like just freak you out and really bother you? And what he said was interesting. He said, yeah, it did, but I don't think it bothered me as much as it bothered you. And I've thought about that a lot. And I think that there are some people who are more prone to being traumatized than other people are. And I don't know if it's sensitivity or what it is in your makeup, but things just affected me a lot more than they did my brother, or seemed like my schoolmates and stuff. You know, I had a dog that I really loved, and we had to give away, and I just grieved that dog for months. And my father, it bothered my parents. They couldn't figure out why this, you know, teenage boy was just, you know, so bereft over this thing. And but anyway, but the thing I really related to was when you said, when you had a child and held the child in your arms, I have 4 children, and they were all just went through stuff that I wish they hadn't had to go through. I mean, I honestly do. You know, the things that I subjected them to, I wouldn't subject to my worst enemy, you know, on purpose. But they grew up with a lot of legitimate trauma in both their homes, you know, both my ex-wife and in ours. And it was dangerous a lot of the time, you know, really dangerous, a lot more dangerous than my life had been. And they kind of glossed over that, I think. But my younger son, Anders, who some of you have seen my movie, he was my cinematographer finally in my movie. And but when he was 38 years old, his children were a certain age, and I can't remember how old, but maybe they were, you know, 11 and 8 or something like that, or 12 and 8. But when they hit that age, something happened to him, and he stopped talking to me for like a year and a half. He never told me what was wrong, you know, but I knew what was wrong. I mean, I could sense that, you know, he was reliving that stuff, you know, by watching his own children, you know, and so I really get that. And then he did therapy and did some stuff, and he just came out of it. I mean, I thought he'd never talk to me for the rest of my life, and he came out of it. And, you know, after a year and a half, and we've never spoken about, we've never talked about, like, why did you, you know, kind of ghost me for a year and a half? And we got together and talked about making this movie, and we did this father and son project that was unbelievable. You know, I was on a Zoom meeting that I did this morning, and I was talking about this, that, you know, in the 9th step, you know, we don't regret the past or wish to shut the door on it. I do regret what my children went through. I don't think I would. I think I'd be, you know, a sociopath if I didn't regret what they went through. But the odd thing is, all 4 of them are really, really incredible people. I mean, they really are amazing folks who are compassionate, and they all, you know, help other people. They're incredibly, what am I looking for? They're artistic, you know, they're sensitive people, but beyond all that, they're incredible parents. You know, they always put their children's needs and you know, way above their own desires and needs, you know, and they take care of their kids in an incredible way. And they sure didn't learn that from me, you know. So sometimes I wonder if that adversity in you know, I was saying this morning that we've all got our snakes to whip. That's Willie Nelson says that, you know, and I think every human does. But, you know, I wonder if all the adversity that they went through didn't in some way make them better people. And I would change it. I would not have had them grow up that way, but they're all sensational folks, you know, who are really compassionate and help other people and are creative and wonderful people. I love all of them, and they love me incredibly, you know. But anyway, that's what it brought up for me. But thanks so much. I really appreciate your share. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Nadine?
Hi, Dawn. Yeah, thanks, Josh. So thanks so much for your share. It's just great to see young men in Al-Anon. And in Australia, we have a really big shortage of men that are able to sponsor other men. And a couple of times I've tried to help men, and it never really went very well. But, you know, I'm still mates with these people, and I watch them struggle. You know, I was always around trying to help other people and trying to make things better for people. And yeah, it never worked. And I've been in this program, I think it must be about 27 years or something. And about every 5 years, there'd be something going on, you know, there'd be some major thing going on, and never good until the 15th year when I got my sponsor and started going through the steps and actually, you know, started working towards some sort of emotional sobriety. Yeah, the first 5 years I had a sponsor who had done a bit of, I think she had a sponsor in AA, and it was big book, but like we never went through the book together. We didn't, it was take too long to explain it, but it, you know, short, it didn't work, and I had to let that sponsor go. And I struggled for years, trying to find someone that would help me, because I knew I couldn't do it by myself. And, I had a partner in AA that was relatively peaceful, and it looked all right on the outside, but I was just dying, And yeah, it's a long story, so I won't go into it. But yeah, when the pandemic came, I was just like, I really related to what you said about couldn't go to meetings, couldn't do this, couldn't do that, because I thought, this is really it now. I'm just going to die here in my house by myself. It was like, this is the end of the world. And I said to my sponsor, I'm back at step 1. And she said, no, you're not. Your problem is distance from God. And this time alone in my house, and I still do a lot of it now because I live on my own. It's just really blessed time because, on step 10, just watching, I think Juanita touched on it quite a bit, watching the way I think and what's going on for me, and being able to turn to God when I can actually remember. And the other point that came up was about what you said about the 3rd step. And, I'm really into the 11th step a lot. But this morning I was in a little group. We've got a little group on a Friday morning. It's Friday here in Australia. And it's prayer and meditation sharings. And the one I picked out was out of that little blue book, As We Understood. And it's just all about prayer and meditation, really, and spiritual awakenings and God. And the one I picked out was about just that very thing, like, sure, the step 11, but do I really trust that decision I made in step 3, that I'm going to let God run my life? And lately I've been feeling like, this isn't how it's meant to be. It's been pretty tough, but what Tom said about the kids, like my daughter's participating in a walk today, 35 kilometres, raising funds for Beyond Blue, which is a mental health organisation, and they're always looking for funds because there's never enough to help people with mental health problems here. And I couldn't be prouder of my daughter, and even like my son who drinks. He's a great guy. I have really good kids, and I think that it creates resilience. And being in the home they grew up in wasn't good, and they knew what their dad did, but they never knew what I was going to do. One of them said that to me, and I lost my youngest son this year, and he was deeply affected by this disease. And that's what I'm coming to terms with at the moment. And, I know I'm going to be okay. And I need to just keep coming to things like this and hearing positive messages of hope. And it's just beautiful to see a young person, able to carry a message like that. And it was awesome, Josh. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine. Susan?
Hello, I'm Sue from Australia also. I'm a grateful member of Al-Anon. Great talk this morning. I had a couple of possibilities for doing things this morning, and one of the readings today ended up saying, seek ye first the kingdom of God. And, I saw that on a church sign just the other day, and that was the thing to do today. Thank you, Nadine, for inviting me to this group. At the moment, my husband and I have been doing the steps myself through the big book, and my husband, who's also an Al-Anon, thank you, Nadine, for giving him a nudge about men in Al-Anon and steps. He's doing it through the Al-Anon way, the Al-Anon literature. And I love that that you mentioned doing the steps through the big book and through the Al-Anon literature, and you mentioned the difference, because I myself was interested that he was doing it that way and not the way I was doing it. And you highlighted the difference. that doing it through the Al-Anon literature was taking you deeper into your childhood stuff. And I found that really an invaluable thing to become aware of. Really, I'm just doing sponsoring myself now, and I'm seeing how important the adult children, looking at our childhood is for adult children. We're all adult children, but adult children of alcoholics is particularly difficult. I just love the whole unwrapping of your journey, and how everything, just when you're thinking everything is bringing in the promises, everything's going well. Really, there's so much more, and how my own journey has been, you know, had its really rock bottom stuff, even though I thought I was on the path, there was so much more where radical self-care had been needed and a greater connection with my higher power to get me through it all. Just a beautiful, beautiful talk. Thank you so much.
Nicole?
Hi, Nicole Alcoholic. I wasn't sure. I feel like I saw Abigail's hand was raised. But okay, sorry. Nicole Alcoholic. I just want to say thank you so much. I was randomly invited last week, and it just, like I shared last week, it just like really rocked me, and I'm just really grateful to be here. And Josh, thank you so much for what you shared and for just everyone's really vulnerable shares. When you mentioned everyone has like a fall, right? Or like these huge moments. Mine was definitely it. Thank you, one, for sharing about that one that you had. I had one similar where, you know, I actually watched my mom pass, and it was like a light switch went off where it just, I could not believe in God anymore. And it actually started me on my journey to going into my worst drinking and then being able to become sober. And so I'm grateful to be here today. And I've actually, you know, I got so desperate last week for relief, right, in that emotional sobriety, that I actually came up with a new concept of a higher power, because I was just that desperate, where I used to hate God. And then I, you know, along the way started healing within that relationship. And so much so to the point where like now I'm like, wow, I'm like creating a new concept, and I'm actually excited to begin that relationship with them. And I don't know, I really wanted to give up on emotional sobriety for a while, because I was like, I don't understand how we achieve this, right? And when I can't achieve something in like a couple of days, I just don't try. But it's awesome to hear the common thread of it being about spiritual growth, right? And your 10 and 11s and your constant contact with a higher power and constant seeking. That brings me a lot of hope, that I can be sober and also happy, joyous, and free. So thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. So I will say a couple things here. First of all, Josh, I thank you so much for sharing. And sorry, let me get back to the people so I can see. I had it on Nicole for a moment there. Couple of things that you said that really was interesting to me was, you know, am I willing to do what God puts in front of me was one of the big ones. Am I willing to do the things that are put in front of me? And I hear this thing, and I know it's very, very catchy, and it goes around a lot. Can I live life on life's terms? And this reading tells me that life's not making the terms I am. And that life's not good enough for me just the way that it is. And it's not that life's bad, it's that I have conditions placed on life, unreasonable demands. I mean, it's just become, I'm attached to everything around me. I get, pulled this way, pulled that way, pulled by your opinion. I used to say all the time, I don't care what people think of me. Where did I come up with that lie? I mean, I am the top approval girl, but I would tell you point blank, I don't care what people think of me. But in fact, that's all I care about is what people think of me. So anyway, I'm running around all over the place trying to fix the world, arrange life to suit me. So it's always funny. I always say, life doesn't make terms. I'm the one making the terms, and life will never show up the way that I think it should. And the reason that I can hear that so well is I had to learn the lesson a couple times over that making good decisions does not guarantee a quote good outcome. And that is I have had to, there have been times in my recovery when I have literally had to believe in it's okay to forgive life for being what it is. And that's okay. Life it's a thing. I don't necessarily like some of its things. So I could really hear your experience when I heard you at Fellowship of the Spirit. And for me, when the world isn't presenting everything that I feel that I'm due, because I'm just a really good person. I come up with that, by the way. I go into this place that is so dark that there's no door to get out of the room. And I will be sitting in a meeting smiling with the right outfit on, everything looking good, and you'll never know it's happening to me. And so when I heard you sharing from the place of truth, like this is what's going on in my life, and this is tough stuff for me. I'm like, yeah, because when I got sober, I wanted to hear the happily ever after story. I wanted that to be what it was. And I found out that is my alcoholism, placing unreasonable demands on life. And so Kimberly, I hate to break it to you, but we are out of time, and I really hate to say that when I just finished sharing. Come back next week and I promise I'll call on you.
I just had a question. What was read at the end? A couple of us were asking. It was like a little poem, a piece that was read that wasn't
that's
recorded.
At the bottom. It's a quote that is on.
That's all I wanted to know. Sorry.
It's okay. Let me see if I can fiddle through my host of papers that I have here. It's at the bottom. It's a quote, and it says, if you want me to read it again, it's only on a couple of the versions. We die of what we eat and drink, but most we die of what we think. And it is from Edward Arlington Robinson. So it just happens to be at the bottom of one of the printouts of the version of the thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Josh, again, thank you. Thank everyone who comes to this meeting, and bless to everyone who benefits from it. We're going to close this meeting in a way that we do every week. We're going to silently go to our inner room and thank whatever it is we thank, talk to whatever it is we talk to. We'll be back in a moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Patty. Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Thanks so much, Josh.
Thanks,
Thanks
Josh.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a
Wait.
wonderful
Thanks so
Thanks,
much,
day.
Josh.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
Josh.
Josh. Thank you, John.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
That was
Enjoy
amazing.
your
Josh.
day. Be
Thanks,
careful.
Dawn. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Bye,
Rami.
everyone.
Thank
Great
you.
meeting. Thank
Have a
you
great
all.
night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Thanks,
See you next
America.
week. Have a great week. Thank you.
Thanks, America.
Thanks, Dawn. Thanks, Josh.
Aloha.
Hey,
Hey, Josh, thank you
yeah.
again. I wanted to ask, was your little guy at Fox and was Derek's
Yes.
girls?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, that is an
Yeah.
amazing spirit. Like I
Yes.
saw him with the spoon around his neck. No, wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
really
He's-
special.
He's part of our story. It's something for our Al-Anon and the AAs, and beautiful stuff can be created there. It doesn't have to always be like that. So you want to say hi?
Hi. Hi, good to see you.
Everybody later.
Hi, buddy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
There he is.
Thank you, Dawn.
Hello.
Thank you for asking me. I hope it seemed like it went pretty well. So
Oh,
I
it
hope.
was
It
fabulous.
went very well. It went
Yeah,
very
it went great.
Incredible.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Good to see you.
Thanks. Great to
Good
hear
night.
you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Maggie,
Yeah.
I was, if you hold on one second, I'm pretty sure I already, hold on, I'm
It
looking.
looks like it's still recording. Do you want me to stop it?
Yes, please.